it's very difficult to convince people that extending healthy human lifespan is important and is beneficial to society. We all know that still the level of awareness about this very important field of research is low. Back in 2013, in the sociological studies done by Pew Research on the American public, only 7% of people indicated that they know a lot about this field. Others indicated that they either know a little or nothing at all. Of course, this percentage grows. In the most recent study by YouGov, sociological company, we saw that there is an increase of the desirability of healthy life extension. We saw that around 60% of people indicate that they would like to greatly extend their healthy life. But we still have a lot of work to do because, you know, one thing is admitting that it's desirable. Another thing is sticking to actually being a practitioner of a healthy longevity lifestyle. So it doesn't seem that somebody knows the secret sauce of how exactly to convince people the best way. And I hope that today's discussion will help us a little bit to put more pieces of the puzzle together. So I'm glad to be joined today by several absolutely awesome people, each of which has an incredible experience in being a proponent of healthy life extension technologies. We're still missing Daria Khalturina, who was greatly introduced before by Oliver. I hope that she will join us very soon. I am glad to see here with me today Roey Tzezana, who is a future studies researcher at the Blavatnik Center at Tel Aviv University, and also he is acting as a lead researcher at XPRIZE. This organization, I will remind you, creates massive competitions with tens of millions of dollars of prizes in order to accelerate the development of critical technologies to solve the biggest challenges that the humanity is facing right now, including actually the problem of aging. Roey is also an author of several best-selling books about the future of technology and society, and an expert in telepresence technologies. I could be actually listing his various achievements very long, but I hope that you understand that this person can bring a lot of knowledge to our today's discussion. And joining us is Maria Entraigues Abramson, who combines a perfectly unique skill set of professional singer, composer, and actress, and also the responsibilities of the outreach coordinator for the SENS Research Foundation. Maria also serves as an advisor to multiple pro-longevity organizations all around the globe. Hello, I'm really glad that you managed to join me today. And so let's speak about the personal experiences related to being a life extension advocate. It's not a very simple thing, you know, the transition towards this kind of worldview and this kind of everyday practice. I believe that it's very important to share with the general audience the personal experiences, this insight, and those emotions that we are experiencing as longevity advocates. Hence my first question, and I would like you to answer honestly. Why are you personally engaged in supporting rejuvenation research? What pushed you into this field? What was the defining moment for you? And what drives you right now?
Who should start? Elena, first of all, thank you so much for having us. I'm super excited to be here.
Yes, please, Maria, let's begin with you.
You want? Okay. Well, my story is it's interesting. You know, for some reason, since I was a little girl, I felt aging was wrong. And one day, my older sister and I were walking around our neighborhood, growing up in Buenos Aires in Argentina. And we came across this very old lady who could barely walk. Her back was completely bent over, you know, forcing her to only look down. And she moved incredibly slowly, uttering sounds of pain with each step. And I must have been 5 years old, I think, something like that. And I vividly remember how much that image disturbed me. And I asked my sister, I said, what's wrong with her? And she said, oh, she's just old. We all gonna get old. and we're gonna die. And then she looked at me again, you know, matter of factly, and she said, we're all born dead. You know, I was too young to understand what that meant, but it definitely hit me. Something changed in me after that. And I'm not sure if it was what she told me or if it was the image of that woman that seemed to be suffering so much. I became very aware of aging, and I started looking at all people differently. I wanted to understand, I guess, better. And the first thing I noticed was that was a similitude between younger people who were sick and old people who were old, basically. And they were not called sick like those younger people who were sick. But to me, they looked so similar. It was hard for me to set it apart. I would, you know, quietly observe how old people would get sick and complain about pain and talk about how lonely they felt, how cruel old age was. They would things to me like, oh, enjoy while you're young, or, you know, what can you be so worried about if you're so young? And, you know, then I would see that little by little they would just completely fade away, and I would never see them again. But the worst part was when I noticed that almost everyone else around me was not very alarmed by any of this at all. You know, they were totally accepting it, totally accepting of it. So, you know, just like my sister said, well, she's old. People would even find positive things about aging, or find, you know, old people funny and make jokes about their decrepitude with cute tone, almost as if to others, these people had transformed into something else that you treat differently, in some different, they were in some different people category, or, you know, almost as people would treat them in a condescending way. Anyway, I just found it astonishing. And then as I grew older, I learned that getting sick is one of the scariest things for all humans. But for some reason, people don't put it together with aging. And, you know, the worst news you can hear in your life about someone you love is that they died. And the second worst news is that they have a serious disease. And aging gives us all of those things, both of them, you know, makes us very sick and kills us. So us and everybody we love. So sometimes, you know, when people,
I wanted to just to ask you, well, for me personally, I know just how much energy it takes to make a bold move and move into making a career in this field. So what pushed you towards becoming active, becoming a fighter, becoming someone who actually makes this change happen?
You know, I think realizing that after thinking that aging was so wrong for so many years, one day I connected with one of the most brilliant minds on earth, and he was working on fixing this problem that had been troubling for so long. And I didn't feel alone anymore. I found Aubrey, basically, and I had to get involved. You know, I just couldn't help it because he was so compelling and so smart. And he showed me that this was not just, you know, a crazy dream or a crazy idea that I had. So I realized that so many people were dying of it, and people cared about disease a lot, but for some reason they were not putting together aging and disease. And you know, and I guess finding Aubrey was just the little push I needed. And also that there was a field for me, because when I was super young, nothing was happening. It was just weird to talk about it. And yeah, when I met Aubrey, I think that was critical.
Yeah, that's a nice story, both exciting and very touching. What about you, Roy? How did you find yourself entering this field, and what drives you right now to push it forward?
So it's funny, my story is actually a lot like Maria's story, except that she experienced it when she was 5 years old, and I guess I only got to that realization.
Technical problems.
I'm sorry, can you hear me? Can you hear me?
Yes.
Can you hear? Yeah?
Yes,
okay.
Can you? Yeah, please proceed.
Oh, okay. So she witnessed aging for the first time. She was 5 years old, and I experienced it much more viscerally in a much older age at 30 years old. It happened when around 10 years ago when I came to visit an old research professor. You know, he was the shining light in his field, and He was living alone now in a tiny apartment with all the age-related disorders there. Muscles dwindled away, couldn't stand on his own, and his mind was dulled. He had trouble remembering what he said a sentence ago. And I was sitting there, talking with him and feeling horrified because it's like seeing a work of art after it has been shredded to pieces. And then I saw a picture on the wall above his bed, and it showed him on his wedding day. And he's all bright and healthy and full of excitement for the future. And when I stared at that picture, I realized that he was actually younger than I was right then at that time. And this understanding ripped away my ability to lie to myself because it showed me that I was heading in the same direction as that old professor. He was at the end of the road. I was going there myself too. I was dying. And I still am. And my wife and my kids and all the people I love and admire, we're all dying. And it's not to serve some kind of a higher purpose. It's just something that happens. Our bodies are breaking down. And the only way we can exist in this world is because of this thin veil of psychological repression that allows us to forget that, to forget the death that we are all going to experience. But once you have this veil ripped off, you can't go back. And I realized that aging was an enemy. It's humanity's adversary. It's an unthinking enemy, but an enemy all the same. And we have to conquer aging if we are to prevent billions of undue deaths. And I truly believe that we can do just that. And much like the ancient Hebrews who spent 40 years walking in the desert, I don't know if I will get to that promised land myself. But I am confident that if we work hard for it, then my children and everybody's children will enjoy radical lifespan extension. They won't have to suffer the indignities that our grandparents have suffered. And that is what drives me now to take a small part in making that vision a reality. That is why we in XPRIZE are flashing right now an age reversal competition to bring about that great development. And honestly, I think that this is why we are all here in this conference together, to make sure that our children and our children's children will live for as long as they want to in a perfect state of health. I want to believe that it's true, but we also have to convince people that it's true in order to make them relate to that dream, to that vision, and agree to take part in the struggles to accomplish it.
Yes, absolutely. I agree with you. And I believe that having more role models is so important. That's one of the reasons why we are having this discussion right now. Well, if to share my own story, you probably know that I started as a life extensionist after losing my mother to cancer. It was an extremely stressful period of time for me, but it also pushed me to understanding what's important in life, what's important for all humans, for all of us, for myself, my family members, my friends, and my colleagues. And I think I had that very deeply ingrained desire for doing something worthy in life. You know, finally, I'm coming from the Russian culture. I'm coming from the Soviet culture, the best part of it, you know, about conquering space, making progress, creating new technologies, and so on. And I think that all the books that I have been reading when I was a child, they affected me quite deeply. And I was looking for something to do in my life that would manifest as something big, as something useful to humanity. And I think that crucial moment when I suffered the loss of my mother, and when I was trying to process all these very sad thoughts related to age-related diseases that are killing people and there are no cures about them and so on and so forth, it suddenly came to me that I can play my role in this. And it became, since then, such an important part of my life that I actually find myself happier doing this than when I was, you know, working just in an office doing something else, something ordinary, I would say. So for me, it's in a way a possibility to reach out to who I can be, not just be, you know, an ordinary person. And I know that might sound a little bit selfish to someone, but I know that this mission may bring healthier, longer lives to millions, billions of people. And that means a lot to me as well. All right.
Definitely. Beautiful words.
Yeah, everyone has his own story. You know, there are several scenarios how people get engaged with the field of healthy life extension. We may discuss it in some other time. Now, let's proceed with our next question. So,
I want to say one quick thing that is that I believe that probably most of people feel like this. It's just that they don't know it. You know, they can't allow themselves to think that aging is something that we can do something about. But most of people agree with the fact that, you know, they want to stay healthy and they don't want to. No one wants to die, really.
Yes, yes, but one has to find the way into the movement somehow. And the first roadblock is actually realizing the feasibility of this change, the real potential, the possibility to do it and to do it in your own lifetime and even benefit from it. So yeah, I agree with you, Maria. So let's discuss, why do you think it's hard for some people to embrace the idea of radical life extension? All of us here are actually very successful examples because we have found our way into the community, right? And we engaged, we joined the movement, we found our thought leaders, but other people are not as successful as us. And I often hear from other activists who are not active as the people who are already working in pro-longevity organizations, that they experience certain, complications. It's hard to deal with the environment. There is pressure from their families and so on and so forth. So in your experience, what do you think is the main reason why it's hard for people to become part of this movement and embrace the idea of radical life extension?
So
I have to tell you. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, let's begin with you, Roy.
Okay, so a few years ago, I was interviewed on TV about the future, and I told the reporter that in the far future, really far future, there won't be any diseases, any disorders, people won't have to die of old age. And the reporter was absolutely horrified. He said, and I quote him here, "Thank goodness I'll die before that happens." Yeah, that was the completely opposite response of what I wanted to convey. But I think this reflects two larger truths. The first is that we're terrified of any major disruption to our current way of life. And we reject even the possibility that such disruption could occur. It's a psychological defense mechanism. And even when the novel coronavirus started spreading around the world, people still couldn't believe it would reach their country, or that they will have to walk around in face masks. They couldn't get out of the present. It's what futurist Jonathan Margolis said, called hubris of the present. And the idea that we won't have to die of old age is so outside the realm of our experience that it triggers our disbelief and fear like nothing else does. And the other reason is that I think we've made peace with what Nick Bostrom called the dragon tyrant, right? There was the dragon that every day received tens of thousands of people as sacrifice. And it's at some point, the priests and the theologians and the kings just said that this is the way it should be. So we see also today that our priests and clerics, they justify aging. They justify our eventual death. They speak out against the childish wish to live forever. And you see that in novels, you see it in TV shows, you see it in movies. What do they show us? They show us that if you are a crazy scientist and you want to gain immortality, you are going to suffer a horrible, horrible fate. But the wise person, he or she accepts old age and their eventual death as part of the natural process. So those who speak up against this natural process are being decried as heretics. They are being ridiculed as madmen. And nobody wants to put themselves in that position. And I think the combination of these two reasons is why it's part of the reason, at least, why it's so hard for people to embrace the idea of radical life extension.
Yeah, I agree with you. There are too many role models that come from cinema that are depicting, long-lived humans as something negative. And actually, in my interview with Dr. Maya Underwood, who studied public perception of research on aging and of life extension in general, she also is saying that the majority of movies are presenting life extension as something bad, and only very, very few of them, and in very limited number of conditions, this idea can be presented as something positive. And I think that people take it too seriously, bringing up, taking these examples from the movies rather from the real life. Because if you, for instance, compare what is presented in the movies as long-lived people, crazy, sadistic, and so on. And if you compare that to the real super centenarians, who are typically very social personalities, they are friendly, they are trying to contribute to society, they are trying, to engage in their community and so on. It's a huge difference. So I really think that it makes perfect sense for people to rely more on science in this regard rather than the movies. But we can do nothing about the pop culture. It will affect people anyways. That's why I think it's very important for the movie makers to work on this problem, because at the end of the day, they are our best helpers in creating the positive image of healthy life extension.
Yeah,
Right.
the good news is that it can change. This zeitgeist can change. And when Louis Pasteur, the inventor of the vaccines, when he said in the 19th century that eventually there won't be any childhood diseases around, in a time when half the kids under the age of 16 years old would die, people laughed at him. He was completely ridiculed, and yet, a few decades later, it became true, and people accepted it as a fact of life.
Yes.
Yes, I think it will eventually happen to rejuvenation technologies as well. Yes,
definitely.
Yeah, Maria.
Definitely.
So what about you, Maria? What's your experience? What's your vision? Why people find it hard?
Yeah, I think there are many reasons, and I don't have one answer. I'm still learning and trying to understand. But the first and most obvious to me is that we have to agree the idea is very radical and hard to believe for most of people. So we're here all very much in touch with the reality of it, but for most people, this still sounds like science fiction. So because they don't believe it's possible, they don't want to get their hopes up, and they find all kinds of excuses to say no. I'm not saying this happens at a conscious level, but that's one of the things. The fountain of youth has been a dream of humanity for thousands of years, and it has always been a disappointment. It's sold to us by scammers for centuries. So I think people, they don't, even if a number of them think it's, I don't think people internally believe you, even if they don't show that. Many of them then who kind of get the idea get scared, like Roy was saying. They don't understand the concept fully, so they start coming up with things like, I don't want to live to 150 years old and be in an all sick body, or this is not natural. That's a big one, even though natural, it doesn't necessarily mean good, right? And there are a lot of unnatural things that we do that are really good for us. But people have, feel it's going to be dangerous, or they're not going to be able to afford these therapies. They're going to be only for the rich. So they come up with all kinds of ideas to justify why saving 150,000 people a day is not a good idea. And what Roy was saying is true. It's very hard for humans to adapt to change. Change is scary, but everybody's different. Some have shame around saying out loud that they believe in it or they want it also. Some people are religious and feel this is going against God's wishes. Others say they like the idea of a finite life that makes more sense to them. There are many reasons that I find. I don't, honestly, I have to say that I don't think this is for everybody. I think some people will not want it. Some people are very spiritual and they want to transcend to the next plane of existence. I talk to a lot of people who tell me that they understand the concept also, and that they just don't want a long life. So sometimes I call it natural selection, which, you know, it could sound a little rude or politically incorrect, but I feel that with a lot of people that I try to talk to, I realize quickly now, I learned to understand which ones are those who are really not going to I don't know, get on board. Maybe when the pill is ready, they will take it, but at this stage, they're still scared, like Roey says. I think fear is a big thing.
But you know, I don't quite believe them. I mean,
Yeah.
you can be as spiritual as you like, but it's so easy. I'm sorry if I'm taking this to morbid directions, but it's so easy to feel yourself today, even without pain. You want to transcend to the next level? Go ahead. So, you know, it's your choice. But you don't see people killing themselves because they want to get to the next level in the game of life or death.
A lot of people think this is not going to be ready for in their lifetime, so they just don't want to get excited. You know, there's all kinds of different things why people don't want to think about this as a real thing. But mainly, I think they don't believe it's possible, and that's a big one. Otherwise, they will probably consider it. You know.
Yeah, I agree with you. There are many factors that are preventing people from embracing the idea right away, and definitely knowledge is one of them. So the very low level of awareness of what's going on in aging research is one of the reasons why we don't see as many supporters yet. Another is, processing of this idea is hard.
Interrupt you with that and say that knowledge is very important, but for us who are, you know, out there doing outreach, I think it's very important to understand that people make decisions through their emotions more than knowledge. And sometimes we feel that we need to explain the science to them and we get desperate about that. And that's not what's going to convince them. Just like, you know, people take medicines for diseases. They don't know how the science works. They don't know how the medicines work. But they feel the emotion of, you know, I don't want to be sick, or I don't want to die, or I would love one not to hurt. So I'm going to give them that medicine. But they don't understand I don't think it's about knowledge and fact as much as tapping into their emotions.
Yeah, Jonathan Haidt phrased it very nicely when he said that in our minds we have the elephant and the rider. The elephant is our emotions and the rider is our logic, the intellect. But the elephant is really big, and the rider is basically dragged along wherever the elephant wants to go, and the rider just has to justify why the elephant went that way.
Exactly.
So yeah, you need to hit people in their feelings, you need to connect to their emotions, and once you do that, they'll find ways to justify the
rationale, to think about.
I agree with you. I think it makes total sense to appeal more to the emotional part of our human nature, and probably one of the good ways to do that will be if the old people who are suffering from age-related diseases will speak more often about it, more about this experience, because it's terrifying. I can assure you that even witnessing someone who is suffering from an age-related diseases, just like my mother did, is an experience that is completely changing your perception. And this is where you probably get the emotional drive that needs to become part of this movement and to become fighter for extending healthy human life. For me, it was exactly the case. I was really scared and I was really, really upset with what I was seeing, with all this experience. And when I started to think about myself and my future, and when I realized that I have absolutely no protection, no defense against age-related diseases right now, because the technologies are not there yet, I just understood that I must become a member of this movement, someone who is doing something for this field, who is pushing the progress forward. And I noticed that at least one scenario of how people become, positive about life extension is exactly this. So they experience some sort of, tragedy in their lives related to someone from the family or themselves. They are suffering from some age-related diseases, and this is when the switch, happens. This is when they start seeing the things as they are. They start seeing the reality. They drop trying to make aging look good, useful for the community, for the society. All that crap is gone after this episode of facing with a very rough reality of what aging is. And I think I like very much this idea that we should be just exchanging more with people who have those experiences and listening to them. It might seem as they will be complaining to us, and it's not exactly socially acceptable in sometimes, but I think it's extremely important to, through empathy, to understand what is it. And I like very much what one of our projects is. It's the reason why one of our projects right now, Lifespan Documentary, is focused on allowing people of progressed age to speak about their experiences, how they see aging, and also about their very strong drive to live longer healthy and to keep contributing to society, because those things come together. Health is just not, it's not just health. Health is the possibility to be productive, right? So we definitely should be looking more in this direction. And that brings us to our last question. That's absolutely unavoidable in such kind of discussions, guys. You have tremendous amount of experience in convincing people that this idea is important. So what tips can you give to our audience to help them become a better longevity advocates? Say 3 key things that increase your chances of convincing the new person that targeting aging with interventions is a good thing. Maria, maybe you will begin.
Well, again, I think we have to keep present that we're going to get through people through their emotions and personal stories. And, some people will decide to join the movement because of greed, because, they want to get involved and will be rewarded, or fear. They don't want to get involved because they're going to be doomed, or pride or shame or envy or altruism, so many different reasons. And, it's a really, it's a long answer, but you said 3 things, right?
Yes.
I think one important thing is make sure that people understand right off the bat that we are talking about extending sick years. That they understand that we're talking about quality of life and health, because that's something that people already understand. So if you use that kind of wording, it's something people immediately get. Everybody wants that. So that's one thing that is important to me when I talk to somebody about this. Then is let them feel that this is something that they already agree with, that it's something they already want, that to stay healthy, that's something they want, so that curing age-related disease is desirable by them. And that's something that, it's easy to get to, and you can have a conversation about that and extend it. And also talk about, the research that we're doing is similar as to the research that we do for Alzheimer's or for cancer, and that there's no way that we're going to abandon that research when we know it has a possibility, so that abandoning this would be immoral, not paying attention to all that we know about the science to cure age-related disease, so that they understand and they feel that this is almost like a moral obligation. I think that's something that I've been using lately, and it works, and then people feel you're putting them kind of on the spot with that, like we can't ignore that. And then and something very important is make sure that you point them to at the right resources, because there's a lot of very confusing and phony information out there about the subject. So that's crucial, that they get in touch with the right stuff. And also, another thing that before is explaining to them that this is not a matter of if, this is a matter of when. This is happening. This is going to happen no matter what. So they can either get involved or not, but this is going to happen. So the thing is that if we all support the mission, if we all work together, we're going to make it happen faster, and it can happen in time for ourselves or loved ones, or kids, etc. But otherwise, it's just going to happen, but later.
To that.
Please.
Yeah, for me, I'm trying to treat this, as a scientific question. There's so much science about how to talk with people, how to explain things, how to debunk myths, and so on. So I like the theories of 2 famous researchers in the field of conspiracy theories and they're debunking, John Cook and Stefan Lewandowski, yeah, that's the name. And they suggested 3 ways that can help change people's mind, and those have proven success. So the first way is to target the wide public, because we see that if you're talking with the true believers, those who are absolutely certain that radical life extension is impossible or evil, you can't convince them. There is a confirmation bias there's the disconfirmation bias. You don't want to go into that. Direct your outreach efforts toward the undecided majority. By the way, that applies to any controversial topic. The other thing that you need to do is to frame your message in a way that is not so threatening to the recipient's worldview. For example, just like Maria said, you need to focus on extending health span and not on achieving radical lifespan extension. Don't tell them that you're going to enable them to live to the age of 500 years old. Tell them we're going to give you at least 20 more years of healthy living. Let's see anyone arguing with that. And by the way, when we created in XPRIZE our longevity impact roadmap report, we actually composed short science fiction stories that made people realize that longevity isn't just living forever, but it means preventing age-related diseases, cancer, cardiovascular diseases, Alzheimer, and so on. So it really
which people already accepted. So that's perfect.
Exactly. Yeah, everybody accepts that we need to take care of those diseases. We need to prevent them. Who is going to say no to that? And finally, you need to fill the gap in people's minds with an alternative explanation. Because if you do manage to change someone's mind, it leaves a vacuum in there. And nature abhors a vacuum. Our minds hate vacuums too. So you need to give them a new narrative. And in order to do that, you can use graphic imagery. You can explain about the original worldview that they adhere to and where it came from. You can explain, for example, I like to do that especially, you can give them a new narrative, showing them how medicine has slowly evolved over humanity's history, and then in the last 100 years, show them what incredible progress we've made because of science, and what in the last 20 years, what happened because of AI and computers and so on. And that provides a new narrative in which science will help us understand and conquer even the process of aging. So once you give them that narrative, it's more difficult for them to counter it because it's so logical, and it replaces their previous worldview that aging is aging and nothing can be done about it. So yeah, 3 ways, 3 principles.
I really like that idea that you have to replace the empty space with something else, or fill the empty space with something else, really. Because, this is how things work when you're trying to change some other types of behavior. And we're speaking about behavior here, right? Because life extension and sticking to life extension and promoting life extension, all of this is behaviors. Even, biohacking is a behavior, correct? So indeed, it makes perfect sense. And I agree with both of you actually about those tips. And I will still try to add a little bit from myself. My first higher education is teaching. So as a teacher, I noticed that quite often we're dealing with people whose background in aging biology is, let's put it this way, scarce. They might not even remember what was discussed on the biology class in their school. And often when we even start the conversation about aging, people may not be able to give you even the definition of aging that will be closely, somehow connected to the current scientific understanding. And when you don't have perfect understanding of the core concept of the whole picture, it makes it extremely hard for people to believe in our ideas, because they don't see how aging, that for some people is an evil spirit that is soaking up our vital energy, how this can be addressed with scientific methods or evidence-based medicine. So I would say one important part of the process of convincing people is to making sure that we speak the same language, that they know the more or less, the definitions of the terms that we're operating with, because without that, the picture doesn't come together for them. So explaining that what is aging,
but also I think it's important.
Yes, please.
Sorry to interrupt you. Keith is saying that here in the chat also that it's important that people don't feel that you're trying to switch their position. It's just that it's something that they already they're really in there with you, you know, and you make them feel that, because they really are. I mean, I know people really deeply inside are agreeing with this.
They're scared, just like we, you know, we are all scared. We are all in this human experience together. We need to be empathetic to their feelings and their emotions. We need to connect with them.
Yes, absolutely.
So everybody will have a different, you have to try different angles to get through them, you know, but eventually, usually you can, you know, if you use it in a way, you say it in a way that they feel that, oh, I already knew this, it's just that I didn't think about it in this context, you know, and then it works.
I agree with you, and I think that avoiding any sort of adversity is very important in this regard, because, you know, pressure, of course, has to be avoided, but also you have to avoid collisions when you are colliding with the existing system of people's beliefs. That's why, for instance, whenever I am speaking with people who have some religious background, which actually is not a problem for me, I'm just trying to explain it in a way that they can, you know, understand. For instance, in many religions, medicine is seen as a godly activity, right? Because medicine is healing people, it's increasing quality of life, it's allowing people to fulfill their mission on earth. And when you're addressing it like this, and explaining that extending healthy life is just a part of medicine, people have absolutely no problem with it. So it's really important to find a way how you can connect with people you're dealing with, rather than just, you know, shower them with information and leave them, you know, in this sea of information processing on their own, and often scared, as you say, Roy. Yes.
And I've tested different scenarios with people, and when you mention immortality, for example, you get a totally different reaction, right? But if you make sure people understand, we're just working about, it's just the next generation of medicine. That's all it is. It's nothing much different than that. It's not this weird thing we're gonna do to humans. And also that it's gonna be something you can decide to do or not. You're not gonna be obligated. If you want to age and get decrepit and die of it, you can go ahead and do it. It's gonna be your decision.
Yes, I believe it's very important for people to understand that they are free to make their own choices. Those who want life extension should have life extension. Those who will prefer to experience all the stages of life, and including aging, though they should be given this opportunity, of course. But of course, in my view, as a life extension activist, it's hard to, you know, to hold back and not to, you know, expose your position a little bit more. Let's see how it works in the future. Thank you very much for all your amazing experiences and advices, and for all your insights. Thank you for everything that you are doing right now to support the development of this field. And let's hope that our combined effort will bring life extension technologies to this world in our lifetime. Thank you.
Thank you, and thank you for having us, and thank you for all the work that you are doing, guys. Amazing. Congratulations.
Absolutely.
Love you guys.
Changing the world.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for leading this.
Thank you, Roy.
Thank you.
Yes.
Bye-bye.
Bye. And back to Oliver.
All right. Thanks, everybody. So thank you, everybody. Thank you, Elena, for running the panel. That was extremely informative. Usually I focus on the science, but getting the message out there is also very critical.